Thank you. So let's look already at the first question you have answered. How much do you trust information published in the news media? I think this is a very interesting result in the sense that also very positive. As you can see, the majority, a very big chunk of answer trust the media. So it's in line with what we have seen on Mark, and it's in line of our also finding across the region. When we look at, for example, at factors that make you think like you trust, why do you trust the media? What characteristic needs to have the media content to be trusted? Also, this is quite interesting result. The top three most chosen answer are presence of balanced stories, objectivity and accuracy, which is also what Eero has just presented you as important principle, part of the code of ethics of journalists. Fairness is not so important from your point of view, but accuracy, it is important, and so objectivity. So I think this is quite interesting. First preliminary result. What are the top characteristics to trust what we read and hear in the news story? When we ask also if the level or general level of media trust that is perceived by the population where you live, where you work, is affecting the effectiveness of media relation functions during your work activities. Also here, I think it's quite interesting result because we have a bit less than 1/3 of you answer not much, but of course there can be different reason for that. Some of you maybe don't work in media relations, so maybe that also a reason why not very much. But 2/3 will say yes, it does matter, and obviously it should matter. As a communicator, we also are always in dialogue discussion with journalists when we want to create visibility to our organization, inform about our organizational activities. So this is obviously a good result in the sense that at least professional, we are clearly aware of the role of the media still today, despite the increasing use of other channels, own channels, and social media influencers. Also, this result is quite interesting. We ask you if you have tried to engage with the journalists and the news media organization to communicate COVID-related messages from your organization point of view. We have seen here also that a big group of you actually has done that. Obviously, you might be from a public sector organizations or from a non-profit organization where this is probably also a possible explanation, this result, but not necessarily. We did conduct a study actually, which we didn't present today, but on business organizations and how they communicated their social responsibility, their social initiative during the pandemic. This is a different study, but we also find out that even in the same six countries I presented before, business organizations are actively engaging in pandemic management or support to the government authorities' activities. So it is obviously a clear indication that when they do so, media becomes an important stakeholder, an important public to interact with. And the last questions we ask is that if different level of media trust have actually had an impact in your choices, in your media choices. This is a bit more fragmented. Again, here, some of you mentioned that is actually important parameter when you decide which media channel you want to use in communicating, and some had no clear opinions. So this is also something obviously that with this preliminary data we can't know more in details the why this kind of splitting, but hopefully with more data we might even link it to geographic, your organization, your industry, and geographic location where you base it, and link it with our data on overall media trust. I think this was the last one, I believe. Yes, these are just more general data on the industry who answers so far the survey. So we are really looking forward to receive more answer this and to see how does this media trust affect your work and your activity, and to reflect upon also with the general media trust trend. I think I will stop here and see rather if there are some questions about this, some results, and start a discussion about the learning for professionals with my colleagues in the studio.
Thank you, Chiara, and exactly now it is time for your questions, so thank you already for those that you have sent to us. And I will also invite Eero to join here and give some room for him, and I will step aside and put the questions forward for you.
And by the way, we didn't show the slide where 60% of our participants have 10 or more years of experience, so we have a very experienced audience.
Absolutely. We will come back definitely with more details, more insights when interpreting this pre-study. Thank you for participating in it. But let's start with the audience questions. So one question regarding the trust and trust in media. Are we in communications partly responsible for the declining media trust, for instance, due to our PR spin towards media? What would you say, Mark?
I think we have to take some responsibility, yes. It's easy to point the finger at journalists, but we have to take some responsibility because we have a certain reputation in public relations, especially for spin. And so whilst we are fighting for our own corporations, our own organizations, to get our point of view across, and we have a lot of competing opinions, and we have to fight for our opinion to get through all the noise of news media, we do tend to spin a little bit, and so that has caused some repercussions. Our reputation has been somewhat damaged, and so that has been reflected in the news media, but we should share some responsibility for that, I think.
What about Eero? Do you want to comment on the same?
Yes, please. Yeah, that has been the case actually. Also, we have issued some reprimands because of that. I think it's very good that we can handle openly these kind of problems, and also the point that at least I think in many other countries, but also in Finland, that there are ethical codes for communicators as well.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Can I add something? Yes, thank you. I think this problem of responsibility also should be broadened up because, of course, PR and communication professionals are in the front line. They interact with journalists. They are the one who, through the careful usage of the wording and communication, can persuade. But we have always to remember that much of what we communicate is a more collective decision of the senior management in an organization. So obviously, it's a big task for us communicators to make clear to our senior manager organization that that kind of message cannot go off because it's going to produce more negative effects than positive ones. And so it's not just the evil communication professional that is spinning and manipulating information. If he or she does that, of course, there is a team of people who are trying to say, we need to look better here in the news. We need to send our message. You have to convince the people about us. So there is a lot to discuss about, I think, responsibility and accountability of what is going out of organizations,
yes.
even in political organizations.
Yes, and Eero mentioned journalists have their code of ethics, and we do too in our industry in different countries. Wherever you are, we have our own code of ethics too, and we should be constantly looking back at those and making sure we abide by those.
Very good. You partly touched upon this, but I will ask it anyhow. So what can communications professionals do about the declining media trust?
Yeah, well, this ties very much into what we were saying, isn't it? That I think we need to join our associations wherever they are. In Finland, there is the ProCom, the Association of Professional Communication, Association of Communication Professionals. And then I know in Australia, where I'm originally from, there's the Public Relations Institute of Australia. All around the world, we should be getting more involved in these associations so that we collectively adopt more communication ethics. This is something that I don't need to remind you of. It's been drummed into us, but we need to make sure that we've got a long way still to go. And by joining and getting involved in these discussions with our associations, I think we can do a better job.
Eero, I'm turning to you with the next one. So if media trust is high, is it easier for communications people to work with journalists? This is very interesting result. Can we draw a conclusion? In Finland, there are less classical problems to work with journalists than, for example, in France.
A good question. I'm not so familiar with the French media that I could answer, but I think and I hope that when the relationship is functioning well, then each of us know the rules and live by them, and maybe if that's the question, if it's a question of that kind of situation, maybe then it's easier to live in Finland. But I don't know the French system quite well. I know some French people, and they are quite how would I say, they are quite used to demonstrating, and maybe that kind of mentality is lower here in Finland.
What about Mark?
Yeah, we teach in universities in public relations courses that it comes down to the relationship between communication professionals, or like media relations professionals, and journalists and editors and producers and so on. That relationship is really important. There is some conflict because we want different things, but it is still essentially a relationship, a professional relationship. And so I guess I would ask, in Finland, how is that going? Do you get a sense that communication professionals in Finland generally have a good relationship with journalists, or there's some tensions?
It has improved. There are tensions. There are tensions, and there are journalists who think of communication professionals as their enemies. There are still people, but I think it has improved.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Some countries it would be worse than others, but I would expect Finland would be quite high. Yeah.
What about you, Chiara? Do you want to comment from your perspective?
Yeah, I think one point I would like to add to this is that unfortunately there are still a lot of pseudo-professionals who say they do communication and PR and do bad job, and they damage the reputation of the communication professionals. So it's particularly important also as a professional who follow the code of conduct, who have been trained to do the proper PR, also to be explicit and to tell to our clients, to our journalists, to make sure that people understand that we are not the one who is just doing something with communication without actually taking in consideration this code. So it's very important to also do, I would like to use this word, self-branding the profession, to make sure that those who we encounter understand they are interacting with us, and we are, if not certified, but we have been going through the proper training, we are the qualified ones, and they are not getting services from someone, pseudo communication person who might do more damage than good things to the organization. And this is something that unfortunately It varies across countries. So we see in other studies, also available through the global alliances, that these certification, these qualifications are very different in different countries. And the communication profession, unfortunately, is still one that sometimes is taken over by real communicators. So that's also an issue that undermine the relationship and the building of trust, of course, between the journalists and communication professionals.
Yeah, and that's another reason why we should be trying to make sure that our associations, our professional associations of communication professionals around the world, in each country, try to make sure that that you join up, because then we have professional development and codes of ethics that we make sure that they are applied and that people are following them. And I guess that's the same with the journalists, that there are pseudo-journalists, and I guess you guys would also want to make sure that they all come under an umbrella of professional associations and code of ethics.
Journalism is an open profession in Finland.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Very good. We take a next question here. Has there been any similar kind of phenomenon other than COVID-19 that has affected communication, media and media trust accordingly? For instance, during last decades. Are there any benchmarks for the COVID situation?
Well, Chiara, I think, mentioned this, and you also defended journalists when we talked about this collaborative role of news media, that there are communication or mass communication scholars who have said that during times of war, that the news media organizations, journalists, should be collaborating, and there is evidence that they have in wartime collaborated with the authorities, with their own national governments.
Maybe they also were forced to cooperate.
Are they? Okay.
There was censorship and stuff.
Yes, because I noticed you pushed back on that, which is fair enough, and we would expect a journalist to push back on that you are independent of influence.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think we haven't been even close to that kind of situation we were, or people living back then during the Second World War. Happily, we haven't been close to that kind of situation with the COVID crisis. I would say that as for trustworthy news, maybe you can say easily that climate change has been debated as much as COVID, and very similar kind of grounds have been used in this debate.
Very good. Let's move on. So we have time, a couple of more questions. So media are never independent because people are writing the articles and they always have an opinion. Isn't it more about making the right judgment on both ends? The communications professional and the journalist during the times of crisis, not a matter of a balancing act, with a question mark.
Wow.
Yes, can I take this question?
Go ahead, Chiara, please.
Yes, this is a super right comment. So I think that's exactly what is about it. In times of crisis and like this, of course, the citizen can make their own opinion based on what is said and a different perspective and that they are presented there. So the diversity of opinions is actually an important element to judge who said what and what is the purpose of saying that. So the citizen can judge that. However, in our study, we found that this kind of particular situation where the crisis is created by the novel disease. I mean, remember that we didn't know much about this COVID-19 disease. Now we know more than a year ago, but still it's not like a complete set of knowledge. So when people have really low knowledge on the disease, to judge the different opinions on the topic, or maybe they get the knowledge, but they do not have the expertise to say, to ponder, to weigh these opinions, they need to trust someone. They need to trust the assessment of someone. And that's where comes media trust is very important. If the people trust the media do their job properly, then they trust also what they read and this assessment of the different opinions out there. If trust in the media is low, and then there is a lot of different opinions, they might start wondering which one is the right direction. Should we do this or that? Who is right? Who is wrong in this conversation of COVID-19? And this is what is happening. I would say now we're still collecting data, but I think now with the vaccination, it's a similar kind of discussion. Who is right? Who is wrong about these vaccines and the prevention they can offer us? We don't have sufficient knowledge to make a true 100% with confidence decision on that. And we need to trust someone. We need to give confidence someone who has more expertise and has more inside knowledge on these new diseases. So the diversity of opinions might actually turn things a bit more difficult might create more confusion at the end than actually helping people making sense of the best practices.
Yeah, but can I just say, related to this question about diversity of opinion, I think that media trust has been problematic partly because I think in the news there is not much clear distinction in some countries between opinion and news, right?
You're definitely right.
Yeah,
yeah, and it's very difficult for the audience to find out the difference between different kind of genres.
Yeah,
they don't recognize the different kind of genres.
That's right. It is a genre. So particularly in the US, we are familiar with CNN, Fox News. They have opinion and comment genres, and then they have the hard news genres, and that sometimes gets a bit blurred.
Exactly.
Very good. There's a very precise question. Maybe Chiara, you can start with this. So content diversity and trust do not correlate in some countries. Did I get this right? How would you read it? Another remark, knowledge uncertainty was low in Sweden, although Sweden has had poor success during COVID crisis.
Yes. So this is actually very interesting. They are a little bit interesting result because they are very different. I think the Swedish case is a particular case where we have seen that during the pandemic, also what we call it more societal type of trust in the fellow citizen has increased, despite the fact that the government had, particularly during the first year, had a very different approach, let's say, in the management of COVID, or let's say they had the liberty chosen to look for herd immunity. Despite these things, so despite the assessment on the government, the trust on the media is higher, and on the fellow citizens was higher. So this what tells us. It tells that the trust is a very complex mechanism, and in a time of a pandemic like this, it's not just trust in the media or trust in the government or trust in health authorities. It's a combination of different levels of trust that together help people confidence on coping. Because we receive information not just through the news media, we might directly from the government, health authority, or even through other channels or through direct contact with, I don't know, health personnel like doctors, nurses, and those working in the first line. So I think this could be explained in that terms that the Swedes had low knowledge and certainty, meaning they were feeling comfortable to coping despite the fact that the diversity of sources and the government choices were different because of this other form of trust. As for the first question related to, sorry, remind me, was about media trust and diversity in content.
Yes.
Normally, we would say yes, there is direct correlation between source diversity and news credibility. So we normally would say media gain credibility when they cover different kind of sources, different kind of content, different kind of opinions. However, this is still valid during the pandemic, but we are seeing that this is not helping the coping mechanism, because in some countries, citizens have to feel more stressed and more confused by the quantity of information, by the different opinions out there. I hope I answered the questions.
Thank you, Chiara. Thank you so much. And I guess it's time for us to round up this interesting discussion here today. So a huge thank you to our presenters, our online audience, and let's continue the dialogue on ethics in communications in the social media and in the different events during the Ethics Month. And I will use this opportunity to remind you of a couple of those we have in pipeline for you. So on February 10th, we will be broadcasting about artificial intelligence, communications and ethics, the challenges and opportunities. Please register and join us online there. Following week, February 15th, trust me, I'm in PR. How to work with your organization to build relationship that improves reputation, earns confidence, and maybe, just maybe, leads to trust. So a lot of good events. Join the dialogue. Let's continue the discussion in the social media channels by using the hashtags Ethics Matter and Ethics Month. Thank you for joining us here today. Have a great day and have a great February Ethics Month.